The Florida Podcast Network, the voice of Florida.
From Mallory Square in Key West to the Governor's Mansion in Tallahassee and all points beyond, you're listening to the Florida Beer Podcast, powered by FloridaBeerBlog.com, your source for all things related to the craft beer community in the Sunshine State. And now your host, Dave Butler.
We are back. It's time for another episode of the Florida Beer Podcast, powered by FloridaBeerBlog.com. This is Dave, your host and author. We are in Palm Beach County once again for this episode. And before we get started, make sure to follow us on the social media apps of your choice. We're on Instagram and Twitter at Florida Beer Blog. We are on Facebook at Florida Beer Blog. Actually, no, we are on Facebook at FL Beer Blog. And we're also on the interwebs at FloridaBeerBlog.com and FloridaBeerPodcast.com. And if you go to FloridaBeerPodcast.com, you will discover we are a proud part of the Florida Podcast Network, which is an awesome collection of lots of shows, such as Florida Man News, whose host Joel Lowndes was gracious enough to be a special guest host on the last two episodes that we released. He is not with us today, unfortunately, as we are on the other side of the state from where he is. But producer Steve is back with us. Yay! So you'll be able to listen to him as well. Before we go any further, also make sure to follow this Florida Podcast Network. They are at FloridaPodcastNetwork.com. They are also at FL Podcast Net on Instagram. That is a great place for you to see what we're up to and also get some additional information on the shows that they have. So we are going to be in Boynton Beach. That was home to 4 different breweries. We lost one of them a couple years ago, and then we had another one disappear, the biggest one in a very high profile closure in 2021. But there's 2 remaining. I want to interview both of them, and eventually I will, but for today I'm going to be interviewing NOBO Brewing. NOBO stands for North Boynton, because it is basically the northern point of Boynton Beach. And the co-owner, Tim Dornblaser, created the brewery with his brother Steve many, many years ago. My wife and I first tried their beers at the Delray Beach Craft Beer Fest at Old School Square. Absolutely fantastic. They have had some interesting naming issues that Tim was nice enough to talk to us about, and it's kind of wild. But they're doing great. They just expanded, and producer Steve and myself sat down with Tim and their new exclusive VIP room that you can actually rent out behind these giant barn doors and a beautiful backdrop of hops. If you follow producer Steve at The Great Beer Adventure on Instagram, you'll be able to see the picture of Tim and myself relaxing and enjoying a conversation and a few beers in front of that gorgeous, gorgeous backdrop. But enough about me. You want to hear from Tim. And so enjoy this interview as we sit there. We talk about beers in Boynton Beach in particular, and Palm Beach County in general. There's a lot of great stuff that they've been through because they have been around for quite some time. Their beers definitely show that experience. Their footprint on the Florida craft beer scene definitely shows that. And I was very happy that Tim and I were finally able to connect and get him on the podcast, just like I've been hoping for him to do for a very long time. So enough about me. Tim Dornblaser, NOBO Brewing. Enjoy. So, before we even talk about beer, what's in a name? Because you know that you and I have had that conversation because we have met quite a few years ago.
Yep.
Back when you were Loggerhead.
Exactly.
And I find the story interesting because it's not just naming, but there's a lot of other things that are in the underbelly of the craft beer industry.
Correct.
So,
yes, we were originally Loggerhead Brewing Company. And when we started in attempting to go commercial, we got a cease and desist from who knew. There was Loggerhead Brewing of Medina, Ohio, that is a brewery restaurant. And so
and can we just go and say that is it spelled Loggerhead the same way that you had it spelled Loggerhead, which if you never saw the logo, it was Loggerhead as in the turtle, but the lager part was the beer part.
Yeah, it was Lager, but yeah, a play off the Loggerhead turtle. Trying to tie us to South Florida and all that. But yeah, there was a loggerhead of Medina, Ohio. So we at that point went looking for a name, and we were trying to kind of tie ourselves to South Florida. So we went with at that point then Driftwood Ales. And then the next issue we found was that there is a Driftwood Brewing in Canada who was attempting to start distribution in the United States. And we then received a cease and desist from them.
But they were Driftwood Brewing.
Correct.
You were going to be Driftwood Ales.
Correct.
And that was too close?
It would have been too close. And being that we didn't even have our doors open yet, and they're a multi-million-dollar large brewery in Canada, we kind of felt the legal fight really wasn't worth it.
Even though that would be an international legal fight, correct?
Agreed. And the owner of Driftwood Brewing and I had that heated discussion because on the phone, he was kind enough to inform me that I was stupid, that I couldn't even Google and see that he existed, to which I, of course, informed him that I could Google and I could see that he's in Canada and I'm in the United States.
Did he insult you in French and English?
No, just in English. Just in English. So... But again, we felt that the legal battle wasn't worth it. So we went and sat down and thinking about what were we going to call ourselves. And we knew we weren't going to be the biggest brewery on the block. We weren't really going to be a nano because we're a 5-barrel brew house, but we're also not the size of the other microbreweries that were around us. And so we kind of felt we were in between. So we felt we kind of coined ourselves a neighborhood brewery. We could make enough beer for the neighborhood. And a lot of the businesses in the area that we're calling this the NOBO area or North Boynton district. And so we felt what better way to be part of the neighborhood and be a neighborhood brewery, but take the name of the neighborhood. So that's where it came from.
And it seems like the city actually had a large role to play in promoting this neighborhood and eventually becoming what you can still see the signage as the brewery district.
And they did. They did. And yeah, Boynton has been very supportive of the craft beer. And they're always been great to work with. And they try to promote us and help the brewery district to not only survive, but thrive. And yeah.
Now that is definitely not something that you see with other municipalities. And I've heard some significant horror stories about working with other municipalities.
Correct.
Why do you suppose that the mayor and commissioners and everybody here in Boynton were so supportive, going out of their way, it seems like, to be supportive of you and the other breweries here? I
think they saw in other parts of the country and other places where breweries can really help redevelopment and attract people to an otherwise not necessarily run down, but undervalued area of a city. And I think they saw that occur in probably the Carolinas and elsewhere and felt that this was a great way to revitalize this area of Boynton. And I think I would think it has, because for the most part, if it weren't for the breweries in this area, I don't think you'd see very much commercial traffic. And
well, you'd see almost no traffic at all on a weekend.
Exactly.
There'd be nobody coming down this road on a Saturday or a Sunday, especially.
Yep. Yeah.
And I know you've always been a big fan of the cultural revitalization that a brewery can bring to a community because of, how connected you are with High Springs. And then obviously
High Springs Brewing helped a lot up there. Look at Wynwood though. Everything they put in Wynwood revitalized Wynwood.
Yeah. It put Wynwood on the map.
Getting breweries on Sistrunk Boulevard right now in Fort Lauderdale, and they're revitalizing that whole area.
Yes.
Which is kind of amazing. I guess what happened to the brewery district? Before we get into NOBO, because at its heyday, you could really, count 4 craft beer breweries, because right where we are, Copper Point is very, very close. You had to pass by what was due south.
Yes.
And then if you expanded it just a little bit more, you had what used to be Devour.
Correct.
So and from 4, we went to 2.
Down to 2. And I think some of that has to do with probably a little bit of our own success, given that the area has done so well and has brought a lot of other businesses and a lot more traffic to the area. it's allowed rents and all that to go up. And in Due South's case, it caused the rent to go up to a point that it was going to make business very difficult for them.
I would assume that you speak with Matt Cox, the co-owner brewer at Copper Point, on a fairly regular basis. What kind of effect did you see upon Due South's closure?
I would say right away, I don't think we saw a whole lot, but slowly we've definitely seen a lot of their regulars and rolling in our doors. And since we have now expanded, we've been able to take over some of the events that Due South used to do, and trivia and bingo and things like that. And so we've started to see a lot more of their clientele roll into our doors. It is, though, a little disappointing. We see a lot less people that are here to jump between breweries, which was the great thing with Copper Point, Due South, and us is a vast majority of your customers walking through the door were either starting with us or finishing with us, but here to hop across all three of them. It was having three breweries was a big draw.
Do you get a lot of people that are still coming in from out of city, out of county, out of state to do the beer in this area?
We do. We still have quite a few of those coming in. Obviously, with it now getting down to summertime, we see a little bit less of that. But during season, we'd see quite a few people coming in from up north, coming down to hit the breweries, starting in West Palm and just working their way south.
And it's always interesting, especially with Southwest Florida, because we just spoke about that, concerning season. Because you take a look at the center of the state, season is now. Like, this is the summer, this is where everybody's out of school, and this is where they all come for vacation. But when you talk a lot about here, season are the winter months. And a lot of that has to do with snowbirds. Do you get a lot of the snowbirds that are coming? Is that a lot of your tourism?
We do get a lot of snowbirds coming down, or just people in general trying to come down to escape the winter. They have family or friends down here, and they come down for a weekend or a week to escape the winter. And so we can definitely see in our sales and the number of people coming through the door that we get a lot more coming through the door in those winter months than we do in the heart of summer.
And I definitely want to talk about styles and what you like to do a little bit later, but with the Snowbird specifically, is that something that you plan for, not just in terms of volume, but in terms of styles? When the Northerners come down, they like these kinds of things a little bit more. Let's start going towards that end.
I don't think we do a whole lot of that. I think kind of how we brew and the different styles of beer that we do. I think we might vary it a little bit, but more because it's winter months, so we might get into some of the darker, heavier beers.
Well, Florida doesn't usually follow those style rules that the North does. We don't produce stouts in the wintertime because it's 90 degrees in the wintertime.
Even though it's June and we're all drinking a barrel-aged imperial
we
stout
do what we want to do. We're Florida.
Yeah. We don't make a whole lot of changes to what we do.
I mean, you might do like a Christmas beer.
Correct. We do a Christmas beer. Yeah. I mean, we still follow all the traditional, seasonal beers. We do our Oktoberfest and Dunkel and Schwartz beer around Oktoberfest times. We then roll into our Christmas and all those different styles just for the season though.
Gotcha. So obviously you need a place to brew all these beers.
Yes.
And we're sitting in your facility, which is nice. Why was this the location that was settled? Because if you take a look, if you've never been here, it's back a ways. You have to kind of go by the waste management facility, which is having some sort of a party right now. And
it's a left, then a right, then a left.
Left and a right, then a left.
And then a left.
It's literally, it's us. It's your parking lot. It's the Tri-Rail track, Interstate 95.
Correct.
What was it about this location that said,
it was, we knew when we were opening that we were not going to be the biggest brewery out there. We weren't going to be able to be a destination brewery like I feel some of the larger breweries in the area are. So we had talked to a number of the other smaller breweries in South Florida, and the number one thing that I always heard was it became difficult to as a small brewery to be back in a warehouse district and try to get people to come back there and find you. So we knew that if we were going to be small, we wanted to be somewhere where there was going to be a draw to bring people here. And with Due South and Copper Point here at the time, we knew both of those were large enough to be destinations. And just by the fact that we would be the third brewery in the area, people would find us. And that has held true to be the case. And so we wanted to be in this district. We wanted to be in this area. And then it just came down to finding a space that checked all the boxes in terms of size and rent and how we thought we could use the space and utilize and grow down the road. And this space checked enough of the boxes that, here we are.
Awesome. But like you said, you had at the time 2 very significantly bigger breweries, especially in Due South's case. When it comes to opening up a facility like yours in a space that is not empty, how do you seek to differentiate yourself? What was the focus of, this is how we are going to be not Due South and not Copper Point. This is what you're going to see. This is what you're going to feel. This is what you're going to get when you come to our space.
We knew we weren't going to be a distribution model brewery. We knew, being that we were smaller, we had the ability to be a lot more experimental and do a lot of beers that were a little more off the wall and a little bit more edgy. And so we felt the way to kind of differentiate ourselves where we'd be able to do consistently a lot smaller batch beers and a lot of different beers all the time. And that's what got my brother and I into craft beer. Is we loved doing a lot of different styles and a lot of fun different beers. And we felt that was the way to differentiate ourselves from the other two, is just consistently have fun with it and just do a lot of different stuff that having a large distribution brewery just doesn't allow you to do.
And how much of that comes from your own personal research? How much of that comes from your customers and so on?
I would say most of it comes from our own research and our sitting around having a beer and spitballing ideas, different things that we see when we travel across the country and get inspiration from. So most of it is coming from all of us that work here and just spitballing ideas. And
I would assume there's a good chunk of just kind of taking a look around at what's popular. Because I know, Steve, when you and he's filming and I wanted to get him on. You're taking a picture? Okay. Okay. The last time that we met was at the Rocky Point Brewfest in Oak Galley. And you had a couple particularly nice barrel-aged beers that I think you were able to try with us, right?
Yes.
Yes, you have to remember every single beer that you tried at that event.
If I look at Untapped, I probably still wouldn't remember. I don't think I untapped anything that day.
I think it was a barrel-aged second breakfast.
Yes.
Yep.
Like 16%?
16 or 17%.
Yeah,
yes.
That thing was heavy.
Yep.
And we had a few samples. It wasn't just one.
I guess that's the nice thing about being known by the brewers. I was just able to kind of come back behind the tent where and then Dustin was over at Three Sons. It was like,
it was definitely a crouch down behind the table and get your cup filled up type of moment.
Yeah.
Why? I guess let's start with the obvious question that I don't think I've ever asked anybody else. Why is a barrel-aged treated stout becoming the beer of Florida? In your humble opinion,
I think it's because for whatever reason, I don't feel a lot of the rest of the country has really taken off on those styles. Despite one would think that a warm, high alcohol content, heavy beer would be something you'd see up north all the time, given the winter months. But for some reason, it just doesn't seem to happen. So it's something that has taken off down here. And I think all of us just like like the big stouts. And it is a funny thing to see. One would think Florida would be all lighter summer style beers, and it just hasn't been the case.
No, I was going to say, and it's actually is a good dovetail into the water profiles that we have here. I'd love to talk about that, but I've heard a number of other brewers state that when it comes to the municipal water, that it's really geared towards stouts. That's really, really good for just brewing an imperial like the one that we're all having today.
Yeah, I to be honest with you, I can't say I ever thought about it in those terms. So that could have something to do with it. But we generally strip our water down already and then add back the minerals that we want for the style of beer that we're brewing. So I don't think we've really worried about the water all that much for doing a stout. We make sure we balance it for the style of beer that we're doing at the time. But that's a great thought, actually.
And does it sort of concern you making sure that you're doing a stout that nobody else has really done? Or are there so many breweries, especially here in the state of Florida, that are doing so many stouts that it doesn't matter if they've done it, this is how we're going to do it?
Yeah, I think we run with, we do the stouts that we like. And so I can't say that we really worry about what another brewery is doing or if somebody else has brewed something similar. I think between the 5,000 plus or however many we're up to across the country now, somebody has probably done the beer or that style before. And so, we just kind of move forward with doing it the way we want to do it.
But then you'll do other things. And the reason that I mentioned that is this was the first place that I ever heard about the Legagneur. And it is literally one of my favorite beers now.
Well, thank you.
I think it's fantastic. I know of only one other brewery in the state that has one, and even then it's still in the tanks. It's not out just yet.
Okay.
And if you've never heard of a Legagneur, it is a, well, go ahead and describe it.
It is a German smoked sour.
And I guess my question isn't so much, how did you even find this? And why was it important to you to bring new kinds of beers like this to your tap room?
Well, my brother and I can trace our heritage back to Germany many generations ago. And so
Dornblaser,
yep,
I can see that.
Exactly. So given that we like to do different experimental stuff, we're looking through different German beers and found a style that I don't think we had even heard of prior, and said that looks like something fun that nobody else is going to do, and we figured we'd take a run at it.
And it's absolutely fantastic. But I know that the stereotype of Rock beers is you put it on the tap and it stays on the tap for a good long time. Do you find it difficult to bring these new styles to the attention of your regulars?
Sure. I will tell you the Legagneur does not fly off the shelves. It is, but nor would I think anybody would expect a rare German beer style such as a smoked sour to do. So yeah, it takes a little bit to get people to try it, but that's, again, the beauty of being a small brew system is, we don't have to worry about sitting on, 15 barrels of it. We can brew 2.5 barrels of it and move on to something else.
Nice. So speaking of brewing, what are you playing with in the back? What do you got? What toys do you have back there?
Well, we're still operating on a 5-barrel brew system. However, we are adding a couple more tanks. So we are bringing a couple new 10-barrel tanks and a couple more bright tanks on board. We also now, with the additional space, of finally have an ability to build a barrel wall. So we're finally able to do something that we've wanted to do since we opened. We love doing big barrel aged beers, and we finally have the space and the ability to do it. So we're playing with a bunch of barrel aged stouts, a barrel aged imperial blonde in a tequila barrel. That's
okay. I'm intrigued.
Yep. I think we've got in the next day or two, we've got an imperial milk stout going into a barrel, and the next one up will probably be a Belgian quad. So those are some of the fun things that we're playing with back there.
That sounds amazing. And I know that when you opened, it was you and your brother that were on the system. Yep. You have since hired a head brewer and been able to sort of...
We did, but we do not, no longer. He unfortunately had to move, and he moved back to Minnesota at the end of February. I tried every which way to convince him, but family called. So,
but is that a little bit difficult to take the brewery, take the system, take the beers, take the recipes that you nurtured and you grew and hand it off to somebody and say, do my bidding?
It takes a little bit of trust, and sure, it's a little nerve-wracking going, okay, I've brewed this for the past number of years, and I know exactly how I know all the...
Yeah, this is your brew system. You broke it in. You know its quirks. You know what, it can handle.
And then having to teach that to somebody else and make sure they understand all those quirks and all those little details. Yeah, it takes some trust. And yeah, I would say the brewer that unfortunately left, he picked up on it pretty quick, and I miss him. I will say that. Now, our current brewer, Liz, she used to brew in Boca at Mad Robot. So she has taken over a vast majority of the brewer responsibility here, and she's been with us now a year and a half. So she has definitely stepped up to the plate and is cranking out some great beer for us.
That's kind of amazing. And it's always great to see representation other than people that look like us. Because there's a lot of people that look like us. The only difference really is the length of beard, because that's generally what happens. Everybody seems to have a different length of beard if they have one.
Yeah, but she's been a phenomenal asset for us. I can't tell you how hard she works and turning out a great product for us.
Do you see representation starting to be something the beer industry is really starting to focus on and take into account and try to take steps to move forward from?
I see it in some areas, and then I do see some breweries trying to open up and bring others in, and then I also know of some others that are probably just the opposite. Maybe not consciously, but as much as there have been issues in the industry, there are definitely some breweries out there that I have been surprised haven't gotten sucked into the cancel culture yet.
Interesting.
And I sit and I wait, wondering what day are they going to be on the news?
Obviously, we will not be naming names as much as I would love to. But I will say, since you've been around it's been about 5 years, right?
We opened March 10th of 2017. So we just celebrated our 5-year anniversary this past March.
And congratulations on surviving the pandemic.
Thank you.
Yeah. What was that like for you?
That was a rough year, but that definitely taught us that you had to be flexible and you had to be able to pivot the business at the drop of an executive order. And we did a lot of pivoting. You know, we had to alter our business model and how we operated.
And do you guys can on site, or do you have mobile canners?
We do not have an automated canner. We have the October Can Seamer hand canners, and we canned up throughout the pandemic several thousand beers.
One can at a time.
One can at a time. We ended up with 3 of those machines, and we were running cans. We kept all of our staff employed the whole time. We didn't lay anybody off. We made sure we extended our hours, increased everybody's pay to make sure we took care of all the employees that we wanted them to be able to make it through. So, you know, they take care of us, and we tried to make sure that we took care of them through the pandemic. And I think we came out better for it on the back end. But us, again, being a small brewery and having the ability to do a lot of different beers, we opened up an online store, and we started canning up a lot of our limited release and special release stuff that we generally hold on to for our anniversary. And we did a different beer drop every day for weeks and weeks and weeks. We released a different beer every day, and it kept all of our regulars and all of our very supportive customers were here every day, every other day, grabbing a 4-pack, grabbing a 6-pack, picking up single cans, and they brought us through it.
That is absolutely amazing. And I was going to say, how has Palm Beach County as a whole been towards not just you, but towards the craft beer community? Because I know that they had the ale trail of the Palm Beaches.
Yeah, I think Discover the Palm Beaches has been very supportive in building the ale trail, and even to the extent that they went ahead and I believe they've even created an ale trail app at this point.
Yeah, I believe the ale trail goes from Palm Beach all the way down to Miami now. Like they've included everything that's in between from here to Wynwood.
Interesting.
Yeah. So Palm Beach County as a whole with Discover the Palm Beaches has, I think, been about as supportive as they probably can be of the craft beer industry. I mean, there are quite a few breweries in Palm Beach County now, but still for them to go to the time and the expense to build an ale trail app and build the ale trail and promote it out there is kind of shows their support of the industry.
Which is funny because Palm Beach County is not really known for craft beer, nor is it a county that you would expect to have craft beer in it.
Agreed.
But they're still, I guess, appreciative of the business.
Yes. And again, I think it goes back to they've seen what other parts of the country have been able to do with craft breweries
how a craft brewery can revitalize an area.
Exactly.
Like just having foot traffic come into this, essentially an industrial park, is major for any city, because that brings any local business in the area that's open. You now have business coming in and foot traffic walking around that wasn't there before.
Exactly.
And it's kind of good for you because we're sitting in a space that was another business a long time ago. You purchased the 2 spaces next to you,
yes,
correct?
We were originally just a single 1,600 square feet when we opened, and we're now just under 5,000.
That's amazing. Who started that conversation? Did you go to your landlords or did the landlords come to you? Because I've seen it go both ways.
For the original space, we sought out, we found the space, saw it was up for lease, and we sought out the landlord. But in the expansion, as soon as the landlord heard that the other tenant in here that had the other 5 bays in the building, he reached out to us before it went on the market and asked, do you want more space? And if so, how much? And
so you could have theoretically kept going.
We theoretically could have kept going, but there comes a point where, there is only so much you're willing to risk in increased rent and build out costs and additional equipment and on down the line.
It's kind of amazing. So obviously, since you have more space, what are the next steps for NOBO? What are you looking towards in the future?
Well, we made sure we made provisions so we can get a bigger brew system in here. I mean, we would love to, as much as being a 5-barrel system has allowed us to be experimental and all that, we have found our core beers that do well out in market. And so we would love to now be able to build the brand bigger with some of those core beers and be able to get a 15-barrel brew system in here so we can do a little bit more distribution and start to roll into that model.
That's kind of amazing. And I guess, are you a little bit hesitant, or have you learned some of the lessons that came from Due South? Does it sort of hang over everybody's heads as a what not to do?
Sure. And I think we're pretty conservative with how we go about, how we kind of plan our expansion. Due South, to their credit, had a ton of space, but I think we've looked at that and said, there's a cost to that much space. And if rent or something drastically changes all of a sudden, then that can very quickly go from being an asset to being a very, very big liability. So I think it's being very careful as to how you expand and how you increase your footprint. And
I will leave you with this, since not only are you proud of Boynton's, but you seem to be so proud that you literally put the reference in the name of the brewery. You think that with the local support, with the county support, with the drinkers that you have both year round and the snowbirds, that you can really build up Boynton Beach to be a craft beer hub in the state of Florida?
I certainly think so. I mean, Due South was a statewide brand. Copper Point is a statewide brand. We inked a deal with our distributor as they expand their footprint and they go statewide, that we're going statewide with them. And I think everybody has already heard of Due South, and a lot of places across the state did know them. And so I think we were already starting that footprint. And I think as both Copper Point and us grow and get our brands out there that much more, I think Boynton Beach will continue to build its star for craft beer in Florida.
Awesome. And it looks like the future of that is going to belong to NOBO, which is,
I certainly hope so.
Which is nice. Maybe we'll get a Driftwood named beer and a Loggerhead named beer.
That has definitely been in the back of my mind for many a years.
That would be amazing. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Certainly. Thank you.
And there we are with another awesome episode of the Florida Beer Podcast. NOBO Brewing has a lot of great beers. If you can, get to Boynton, check out what they are doing. I can't guarantee you that anything special is going to be on tap, because there's going to be a lot of amazing things on tap. And hopefully, with any luck, that Lichtenheiner will never leave. Hopefully, Tim hears me. We are going to be back next week with another awesome episode. Where we'll go, nobody knows. Except hopefully me. Hopefully I will know what's going on by then. Regardless, make sure to follow us on the podcasting app of your choice. Like us, subscribe to us. If you can, give us a 5-star rating. It really does help get the word out for Florida Craft Beer and the Florida Beer Podcast. And we would be very, very graciously appreciative of it. Remember, we're on Instagram and Twitter at Florida Beer Blog, on Facebook at FL Beer Blog, and our sister network, the Florida Podcast Network, they are at FL Podcast Net, plus the websites floridapodcastnetwork.com, floridabeerblog.com, floridabeerpodcast.com. Our intro announcer is Jeff Brozovich. Field producer that you heard on today's episode, finally, again, is Steve Pekala. Executive producer of the Florida Podcast Network in Grand High Poopa is Jemmy Legagneur. I think I said Poopa. It should be Pooba. I don't know why. I am tired. I need to get off this microphone and have a beer. Hopefully you will come and join me as well. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next week and drink Florida Craft.